Welcome everybody to Chaps Many Cultures, episode 93. On here in the US, it is Veterans Day. Almost said Remembrance Day, but Veterans Day here in the US, Remembrance Day in other parts of the world, and in other parts of the world, nothing much going on. And we'll talk about that and the way they're celebrated in just a few moments. I remember you.
Do you? I'm so happy you do.
You're the one that makes my dreams come true. That was a song that came to mind. I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm singing that song.
He's dreaming of me, people. This is how far we've come. All right.
How can I forget you? I see you every damn day.
I'm very sorry.
That's all right. No worries. No worries at all. These are the crosses we have to bear. How are you, everybody? Welcome to another episode, another daily episode 93, Two Chaps, Many Cultures. And it is, as I said, Veterans Day here in the US, a day of remembrance, a day of honoring and giving credit to those who have fought and those who have ultimately some that died in behalf of fighting on behalf of the different conflicts in the history of the world. So that's where we're at, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And I guess what brought, obviously it is the day, so we're talking about it today. It's culturally relevant here in the US. As I said, it is Veterans Day here in the US. It's called Veterans Day. We see it celebrated with a lot of patriotism, a lot of flag waving, a lot of retail sales. I mean, of course, if we're going to stores at the moment, that would be, but there's plenty of retail sales online. But of course, in, other cultures around the world, it's called Remembrance Day. It celebrates the end of World War I. Armistice Day, originally it was called Armistice Day, brought in the early 30s. And made a national holiday in a lot of places in 1938, I believe. So it was before the Second World War, but now it has become ubiquitous to remember and honor people from all kinds of conflicts. So what happens in your culture, young man, back in Germany?
And what happens in all of y'all's culture? So as you're watching this live or the recording, drop us a line. Which part of the world are you in right now as you watch this? We'd love to hear from you and give you a shout out if it happens live, right? Remembrance Days is an interesting thing because when we discussed the topic for today, my mind didn't go there. I looked at the calendar and I looked at 11/11, and the first thing that comes to my mind as a German is traditionally on November 11 at 11 minutes past 11, to be precise, 11 minutes and 11 seconds past 11 in the morning, is the official launch day or launch moment for the German carnival season. Has nothing to do with remembering the fallen and remembering the veterans. And the big headline, or one of the headlines here is, oh, there's the carnival, Corona be damned. So that's the first thing that the state evokes for me. And then the second thing is I grew up in Germany as a little kid remembering St. Martin's Day. So today in the Christian calendar, predominantly in the Catholic and the Anglican/Episcopal calendar, today is St. Martin's Day, honoring Martin of Tours, or Martinus of Tours. He became bishop of the French city of Tours. And he was originally from what is now Hungary and was part of the Roman Empire. He was a soldier. He served his country in many wars and many battles, and defected the Roman military because he discovered Christianity for himself and said, no, I'm not going to kill any longer. So that is something that in the Catholic world in which I grew up, my culture was heavily steeped in Catholic values and Catholic traditions. The little kids do a lantern walk. So in the preschools, in the daycares, the kids, with the educators' help, create these paper mache lampshades that we put on a stick, and we place a little tea light, a little candle in it, and then we go, as the sun sets, the kids walk around the block singing their St. Martin songs, lighting their candles, and it's all really fall moody. So it has nothing to do with commemorating the dead, which we in many Central European cultures do in November as well, right? So the beginning of November is All Saints Day, and All Saints and
All Souls.
All Souls, right? That's when we honor a lot of the dead, whether they died for the country in uniform or not. And then have to keep in mind that World War I didn't end well for some powers. So Germany, Austria, Hungary, the Axis powers in Europe were made out to be the aggressors, and were the losers of that war. And commemorating their losses on the same day as the victorious powers did probably was not what they had in mind. So they found a different date. So in Germany, Volkstrauertag, the People's Mourning Day, I guess would be the literal translation. That is, I believe, in the last week of November, when Americans celebrate Thanksgiving. So every culture has their days for commemorating and honoring those who lost their lives fighting on behalf of a common interest of their group, of their nation. Now, how we do that, how we go about that, may be a little different around the world. How does it happen in Australia? Do people pause for a second, or do they sing hymns or national anthems, or let their jet planes fly over the cities? What do they do?
No, not a lot of that. I think it is not. I mean, we obviously have that. We've inherited Remembrance Day from, or Armistice Day, kind of from our British connections, our connection to the Commonwealth. We're still a member of the Commonwealth. So,
as Canada, as we can see here.
As in Canada, yes, Remembrance Day in Canada, yes, absolutely. And so when we look at these celebrations here in the US, as I said, it's celebrated here, and the people are celebrated who serve the country with a lot of patriotism, a lot of flag waving, a lot of big events, even retail sales. It's like the true core of a capitalist economy, right? Is that you celebrate by going out and spending money. We have another day in Australia called Anzac Day, and here's the difference.
That's in May, right?
It's in April. In terms of what you said, we referred to about the view of winning and losing, winning and losing, right? And it's unusual to explain to, say, a North American or American in general, a US American especially, that Anzac Day commemorates a battle in which Australian and New Zealand forces and some British forces got their backsides handed to them. I mean, literally got beat. It was the start of 6 months of brutal warfare in which we were kind of like the invaders to Turkey, but we got turned back, and essentially the whole campaign was a failure, and we got defeated. But it's become such an identifying marker for the Australian spirit and the New Zealand spirit, especially Anzac, Australian New Zealand Army Corps. Because it was celebrated not only by Australia and New Zealand, but also celebrated by Turkey. General Ataturk in the 30s wrote a wonderful piece on just remembering, because he was obviously in charge of the forces fighting against Australians, but he wrote a piece in terms of how brave he found the Australian and New Zealand soldiers, that never give up spirit. It really defined us as a country. And so it's not so much about the winning, because we certainly didn't win, but it's about celebrating the spirit and what it kind of meant to us, in that kind of never give up, never say die type of mentality. And many did die, So that is kind of the antithesis of what a lot of people think of when they think of celebrating an event that honors people that died defending freedom. I mean, obviously we were there. I guess those soldiers were there for what they thought was a wonderful campaign and great cause. but you know, it was all for naught in the end. I mean, essentially, I guess eventually the Allies won both wars, but it is the kind of the way that, for me personally, coming from Australia, I look at the celebrations of Veterans Day, and it's not that it's wrong, but to me, it's an uneasy feeling that why is there so much patriotism around it? I mean, not every war was won. You know,
Right.
I'm big. Obviously, the winner always tells the story. You know, that common narrative, but it also is willing. It's like I will also use the example in Poland, in the small village where my wife comes from. There is a small
also,
plot.
isn't today, November 11, also Polish Independence Day? It's the national holiday,
Independence
is it
Day,
not?
yes. Independence Day, national. It's Independence Day, so it's a different type of celebration. But in some of the celebrations that you refer to, like All Souls Day and All Saints Day and things like that, there's a small plot which I noticed was next to the cemetery in the parish that is in the village. And there was always a side note. And while I was there, I remember being there years ago and one day watching these children laying kind of flowers down around all these graves and thinking, this is very interesting. So I asked my wife, and she said, well, they are German soldier graves from World War One. And this is interesting how they're honoring the dead of essentially, people that fought either with or against. But it's basically foreign people that are laying in foreign soil, right? And taking the care, even in those circumstances, to not only maybe honor the victories, but, and in this case Independence Day, a victory for Poland, but also celebrating at least the sacrifice of the people you fight against.
And what you said about winning and losing, and how the writing of history or the recording of history is often, or almost always, defined by the prevailing powers. I think that may be one of the reasons why the Germanic cultures, whether it be in Germany or in Austria or other Central European countries, that maybe Italy would fall into that as well, that walked away from these conflicts, these big conflicts in the 20th century, as the losers or as the defeated part. And I think especially in Germany and Austria, recognizing the shame of the defeat and the context under which these wars were fought, especially World War II, there is a reluctance among my people to celebrate military, whether it was relatives or not, that we mourn our dead relatives in quiet. I remember my grandparents and my grandparents' generation going to the cemeteries, going to the graveyards, and lighting a candle. But I don't remember that being something where we would have a patriotic celebration around it. And as we are losing Brett because he is lighting a candle somewhere or trying to regain power, maybe he lit one candle too much and raised the fire alarm. Who knows? But I think he's back now. There he is.
There we are. We're back.
So the reluctance for many of those who won or who lost the battle to celebrate those who perished in that conflict may have to do with the shame around it, and it's not necessarily a celebration. It's more of a quiet, a solemn commemoration and honoring of those who passed. And it's stories that we tell in our families or in our smaller cultural circles. It doesn't happen much on a national scale. Who wins a military confrontation may have a different approach to commemorating those who died in the service of their country. Those who walk away from these conflicts as the defeated, they may take a different approach to commemoration.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think in any culture, depending on how you reflect on the right or wrongs of the campaigns that had gone in the past, this is why we talk about, obviously there's a lot of trauma that goes into not just war, not just direct public conflict, but trauma that exists in different demographics, even here in the US, that have an overhanging trauma from slavery or African American experience and that kind of thing. Right. Many of these things are kind of, this is why there's such a push and pull against celebrating those identities and the experience of that. While it's not an official conflict, it comes with the same type of trauma and hangover, right. and so these are kind of very complicated questions that that a society has to ask itself when they kind of pause and think about not only celebrating the conflicts that might bring some pride and patriotism and accomplishment for a country, but also take a step back and say, now who missed out on this? Who misses out on this celebration every time that we have it? And that, no matter what celebration that is, I think we always need to kind of keep cognizant of that.
Right.
That's just my opinion on that. Yeah.
And I'm noticing Karen's comment here, and I kept it up a little longer because Karen's been an avid watcher, and she's always been in the audience. So Karen, thanks for staying true. And also thanks for that comment. Aside from the comment she makes here, I want to point out that the profile picture is not Karen. I'm suspecting that is a male relative in uniform, and that is something that you will recognize on Veterans Day or on these commemoration days. Quite frequently, that people will dig out those images of family members in uniform. I potentially could do the same. However, in my culture, it would be very much frowned upon if I dug out a picture of my grandfather in his Wehrmacht uniform, because my grandfather also perished in a war. He died in World War II, and we don't even know where he's buried. That's part of the reality in post-war Germany, that our fallen family members were not regarded as heroes. They were part of the force that brought so much suffering across the continent. So I would not, even if I had a picture, I may have a picture of my grandfather in uniform, I will keep that to myself, and it is stored away in a box for me and my family to look at if we choose to. I will not display that in public, because to me, that brings up emotions that are not around celebrating. It's more of I want to hide the fact that one of my family members took part in the atrocities that was World War II. So as Brett is coming in and out, he comes and goes as he chooses. I'm gonna make a lighter turn towards the end of this episode. And yes, thank you for clarifying, Karen. It's your dad in World War II. Well, I will say thanks to your father for his service. And that is something that a sentence that we would not say in countries where we were defeated. We probably wouldn't thank our uniformed family members or members of society for their service. We will just acknowledge that they did and then move on. So I thought we picked the onion and we peeled back some layers and from multiple angles. But before we go, there's one more comment from Brett coming in here via YouTube. From Brent, Brent from Canada. On July 1st, every year, Newfoundland and Labrador both commemorate their worst day in war as a dominion and celebrate Canada Day now as a province. Nice. Thank you. I hope I pronounced Labrador right. I recently learned it's not Newfoundland, it's Newfoundland. Thanks for that comment, Brent. And then here we have one more from Karen. Yes. A tough one to share. I'll give you that, Karen. And before I go deeper down in that emotional rabbit hole, I'm going to call it an episode as we see Brett coming in and out, having obviously some technical challenges. So this was episode 93 of Two Chaps, Many Cultures, or 1.5 chaps and many cultures, depending on how we look at this. Brett, I'm ready to let this one go. I notice you are having technical difficulties. I think we shed some light on this day and around this topic. Stay tuned. Coming back to you tomorrow with episode 94. Two Chaps are out. How do I drop my mic? Like this.